So my intention was to share my slides. It's only that we had a power blackout, and I had intended to use my computer, but I think I have to make sure that you understand what I mean, even without illustrations, by saying it in form of words. And the topic was hydrotherapy. I wanted us to discuss, if it were possible, as we look at some of the illustrations that I have, but I'll try my best to pass the message. We all know that water is a creation of God. We don't have water by any other means apart from God created it during the creation week. And therefore, we can say it is a gift from God. And there is no human hand in the structure, in the properties, in the appearance, in anything that has to do with water. It is purely a divine composition. Now, science may try to define what is water and what constitutes water, and they have come up with a simplistic way of telling us that the chemical composition of water is hydrogen and oxygen. But given the properties and the amazing healing properties of water, you can agree with me that we could be having, and we know this for sure, we could be having more than hydrogen and oxygen in water. But one thing we know, when science is challenged on the complexity of certain elements, of certain compounds, it simplifies things where it cannot explain. And that is how science came up with a theory of evolution, to try to explain things it doesn't understand. But if you look at the Bible, you will find a spiritual significance of water, because Jesus himself calls himself the water of life. And we have cleansing, spiritual cleansing associated with water. First John 5, verse 5 says, "Who is he that overcometh the world, but he that believeth that Jesus is the Son of God? This is he that came by water and blood." And the means by which we have received this salvation is likened to water and blood. And I hope maybe some of you could have gone through this week's lesson by the General Conference, and you could have discovered it was denying outrightly that Jesus is the Son of God. Did you come across something of that? Did you try to look through this week's quarterly?
No, I didn't. Wow. So they say straight out that Jesus is not the Son of God?
It was so strange.
Wow. Yeah.
It was so strange. The lesson for this week's quarterly was outrightly denying that Jesus is the Son of God. I would challenge you to look at it and see some of the bizarre claims made. They have never been that expressed. And I was shocked.
Wow.
Okay.
Well, we should not be shocked. It's just like it has been building up to it, but now it's just like nothing is hidden anymore. They just say it straight out.
Yes. And you also understand the time at which is coming. We are having a global agenda to unify all the denominations. And I think the devil knows why it should come at this time. John 19, verse 34 talks of when one of the soldiers pierced his side, blood and water came out. And we have the reason to think, by comparing with other texts, that this blood and water symbolizes the life of Jesus. As he lost his life, he became an issue of life. Even to the soldier who pierced his side, he got healing from this water and the blood. And therefore, it is through this water that we get life. And water is life, is that important. Now, when it comes to matters of matter, that anything that has weight and occupies space, it is a creation of God, including the human body and everything he has given us for our survival. We do not have a lot of knowledge about it, and we can only humble ourselves before God when we try to explore some of these complex compounds and elements that God created. And therefore, even as we delve into this topic, I would humbly admit that I cannot explore to detail about water. There's a lot that is not known. You may have discovered, or you may know, that science has given us some information concerning water, but we may not call it adequate. And the reason is water is not considered by the mainstream or the conventional medicine as one of the major ways of treating. And the fact that it has been discarded as a major way of treating can explain why we are not going to achieve maximum healing in human beings. And our human beings consider themselves to be the most intelligent. That is one thing science admits, that human beings are the most intelligent. But when it comes to how often humans become sick, we have realized that the sickest of the species on earth is the human being. And all animals that are domesticated by him also suffer the same curse of diseases. It is rare to find wild animals that are sick with cancer, sick with diabetes, sick with hypertension. But these are conditions that are common with human beings. And that is the irony of life, that the most intelligent being is the sickest of all on earth. In Ministry of Healing, page 237, you may note that so that you may read later. Ministry of Healing, page 237, it says, in health and sickness, pure water is one of heaven's choicest blessings. And here we see God, or the spirit of prophecy, using a superlative, choicest, meaning one of the best. Its proper use promotes health. It is the beverage which God provided to quench the thirst. And when you talk of beverage, today you know how many copycats or counterfeits of beverages, or of the true beverage, which is water, that have been advanced by the evil one to quench our thirst. God intended the best or the choicest beverage to be water, to quench our thirst, that of animals and man. It continues to say that drunk freely, it helps to supply the necessities of the system and assists nature to resist disease. This is where we have preventive medicine. The key word here is it assists nature, talking of the human body, to resist disease. So water has been advanced by the spirit of prophecy, God himself, as one of the methods to prevent disease, and in other areas, even to cure.
So, Brother Fred,
yes.
have you ever seen people being sick and then they have gone on a water fast?
Sorry?
Have you seen people who have been sick and they have used water fast and then got healed?
Yes, I have evidence of a number.
Okay.
Yeah, who got cured through water therapies.
So how long would you say that they should drink just water then? How many days?
Okay, and I'll be coming to that. I'll be talking about how we should drink water.
Okay.
Because we have principles of using water also. And therefore, water therapies have been used for thousands of years. And we know a major case in the Bible of a person who used water and got healed was Naaman, the captain of the host of the king of Syria. And this gentleman was told to go and bathe in the river Jordan 7 times. It appeared to him something to neglect, and he did not consider it so important. He thought he was being humiliated, but Elisha stuck to his word that he had to bathe 7 times, not in any other river but Jordan. And until when he was humble to obey is when he got healed. So this might emphasize the fact that the remedies that God has given us appear simple and you're likely to disregard them. But eventually, with obedience and with humility to God, we get healing from these simple remedies. I would like to inform you that there are certain properties of water that sometimes amaze me and could be associated with its healing properties. One of the things that we apply in hydrotherapy that has to do with the property of water is its high specific heat capacity. Water resists temperature changes. It can remain warm for a long time. It can be cold for a long time. It can also turn into vapor and persistently maintain its temperature in vaporized form for a long time. And this is one of the things that we can apply even in hydrotherapy. Because water, for example, when we are sweating, water can help us to cool our bodies and at the same time remain in the same state it is. It can help to cool our body without losing its temperature. And it can keep us warm without also losing its temperature. And that is one property that is called we regard as high specific heat capacity. Now, this one might have a problem if we were to apply hydrotherapy. I was saying that water has high specific heat capacity, and what this means, if you are to take water at 16 degrees, and we know the core body temperature is 37 degrees, the amount of energy that is used to raising the temperature of water from 16 degrees to 37 degrees, it's a lot. You'll be using a lot of energy. And this translates to losing your immunity and ability even to fight diseases. And that is why we should always take water at a temperature that is commensurate to that in which water can be absorbed in the body. So this is very important. If we were to take water at a higher temperature than 37 degrees, it would also be needed to be lower to the core temperature, and so that it can be useful to the body. So that is how we can lose a lot of energy in case we are taking water that is not that does not correspond to the core temperature of the body. So very important. The other thing is that...
sorry, would you repeat the temperature? I'm sorry, what temperature did you say it needs to be about?
Okay, I was explaining the specific heat capacity of water. And what you mean by the specific heat capacity is you take the mass that is in kilograms of the water that you are drinking, and its temperature, the temperature of that water. And then there is a constant, which is the amount of, which is an energy parameter of water that we call the specific heat capacity. So I was giving an example by saying, if you're to take water that is colder than the temperature, than the core temperature of the body, which is 37 degrees, that water would need to be raised to the core temperature to be able to be used in the body. So I gave a case where suppose you're taking water at 16 degrees. I want you to consider the amount of energy that your body would require to raise the temperature of that water from 16 degrees to 37 degrees. So to calculate that energy, you take the temperature change, that is 37 degrees minus 16 degrees, that is the difference, 11 degrees, and then you multiply by the mass of the water you have taken in times a constant, which is 4,200, and that is the amount of energy you are losing to raise the temperature of the water you have taken. This energy is translated to loss of immunity, loss of ability to fight condition that you might be having. And that is why people who are fighting certain conditions, chronic conditions or infections, must try as much as possible to use water that corresponds to the core temperature of the body. So that was about the high specific heat capacity of water. Another property of water is that it is neutral. It has a neutral pH. And by meaning neutral, we simply mean it is most likely not going to alter or to change the balance, the pH balance of the body, because the pH of the blood, it's always narrow. It is 7.35 to 7.45, and any fluid that is not neutral is likely to tip that balance either to alkalinity, meaning the higher side of pH, or to acidity, the lower side of pH. The good thing about water is it is neutral and it does not significantly alter the pH of blood, which is key also in immunity, because acidity would mean that we are going to destroy the homeostasis, that is the balance within which enzymes and certain proteins that help us to fight infections can function better. So water is neutral and does not significantly alter the pH. And that is why it can be used as a buffer. In case of acidity, water can be used as a buffer. That is to neutralize the acidity and to ensure the body is protected from excess acidity in the blood. And acidity is the backbone nearly of all diseases. Anytime there is an infection that is going on, anytime we have a chronic condition, most likely the blood is acidic, and water comes in to neutralize or to form a buffer so that our blood does not tend towards acidity. So pure water is neutral, but anytime we add anything to the water, we lose that neutral pH. So, and that is why we say somebody who is taking tea or juices or any other fluid thinking that it can work the same way as water, you lose the properties of water in terms of its neutral pH. So water cannot be substituted with any other beverage. It is the choicest. The reason is because it is pure. We also know that water is a universal solvent. It's a very good solvent. And by design, by divine design, whatever dissolves in water at the temperature at which we are supposed to take it, say 37 degrees, becomes also absorbable by the body. And I'll give you an example where we have surface water, or people used to drink water from the river, from wells. Any mineral or element that is going to dissolve in water at 37 degrees will also be absorbable by the body. And anything that does not dissolve at that temperature is not healthy to the body. So God has given water these properties to be able to dissolve elements that are useful to the body at that temperature. And that is how we know that we are going to benefit from minerals from underground water if they are soluble in water at that temperature. So these are universal solvent, and by that property, we can also determine or tell what elements can also be absorbed by the body. Now, we also know that water conducts heat. It also conducts electricity. In fact, it's a better conductor than most liquids. And because of this ability to conduct heat and electricity, we can benefit from hot baths. We can absorb the heat. Our skin can absorb the heat from hot water baths. We can also, in case of fever, lose heat to water. So in case somebody has a fever, we normally do not advocate that you use cold water so that you lose the fever fast. Remember, the body is in a state of balance, and the nature has already taken over the work by the time you bring in a water bath. And therefore, we advocate, or it's proper to use tepid water bath so that you can lose that heat slowly. It should not be so rapid. And that is why warm water baths can do better and could be more friendly to your health than, you see, using cold water, thinking because you have a fever, you need to cool fast. We want all things to be done systematically so that you don't have to rush the body by using cold water. So it conducts heat, and it will help you. It will get rid of excess heat in case you have it. And we make the water to be at a lower temperature than the core temperature. Fevers can go up to 40, and the warm water that you're going to use should be less than that to be able to lose heat from a high concentrated heat section to a low concentrated, but the water has to be tepid or warm. The other property of water, which is very important, is it has surface tension. And we can see this when some organisms float on water. They can step on the water without sinking because of the surface tension of the water. And science has come to describe the state of water that provides surface tension as the fourth state of water. Because water can exist in liquid form, it can also exist in solid form, it can also exist in vaporized or gaseous form. But there's a fourth state of water that provides the surface tension, which is between a solid and a liquid. It's like a gel, and that is what enables some organisms to step on water without sinking. Maybe I'm thinking of when Jesus was walking on water, he could have increased the surface tension of water. Or he could have made his body light so that he was able to walk on water. But that is the property I'm talking about. It's very essential when it comes to the lungs, because lungs have a lot of water. We should know this, despite the fact that we know lungs use oxygen, but they have a lot of water. In fact, apart from the brain, the lung is the other organ in the body that has the most water. And gases exchange cannot happen until we have a film of water coating the air sacs. It's very essential in diffusion. It has to be kept there. Otherwise, our air sacs might collapse. And one condition or disease that collapses our lungs is pneumonia, whereby we have the surface tension broken, we have consolidation, and then we have increased permeability, and we have a lot of water in the lungs that displaces the air sacs where air is supposed to be. Surface tension is very important, even in keeping our cells, that is inside the body, in a state of turgidity, because as opposed to plants whose cells are rigid, human cells or animal cells, they are not rigid, and they have to be kept in a state of to prevent them from collapsing by using this fluid that we call water. So surface tension is also important inside our cells. Otherwise, they could collapse, and if they collapse, it would mean there is no life. So those are some of the properties of water that could help us when it comes to hydrotherapies. And when we come to the real treatment, we'll keep referring to them because they're essential. I'm not sure whether we have anybody who want. Eva, it seems you want to make a comment or question.
I think it was very interesting that what you were saying about, the importance of having the right temperature of the water, drinking water. And you were saying, and also that if you have a fever, it should not be, cold water. It was better with what do you call it, temperature,
Tepid, yeah. Or lukewarm, yes.
Yeah, lukewarm.
Yeah.
So, yeah. I don't know if someone else had any questions or comments. So when you say the pH, you say that water have normally a pH of it's neutral. So what do you think about today? It's very popular to drink alkaline water, to buy these machines and make it alkaline. What are your thoughts on that?
Okay, thank you so much for that question. As we compare what we are doing today with what used to be done in those times, and my evidence or my confidence in what is supposed to be done, I always compare it with what God did in the beginning. Because you see, this new technology may come to alter the water so that it is alkaline. But the major question is, do we have a precedence in what was done, in what God did during creation time, and the people who are living at that time? Do we have precedence of that? And I'm asking this because the body has to remain in a certain balance. And alkalinity, that is, the pH is 7.35 to 7.45. And anything that tends towards the higher side, that is 7.45 and above, or lower than 7.35, alters that balance. And that is the balance within which enzymes work best. Other proteins that help us in our immune system also work best. And therefore, we risk doing too much alkalinity if we have to alkalinize water each time we drink it. So I'm looking for precedents. If if the time when this earth was not so much destroyed by sin, we were alkalinizing water. It used not to be. Okay. So my fear is doing too much alkalinization, which may alter that balance. That's my word of caution.
So what they are saying, I don't know if you have heard about this, what is that machine called again now? I don't remember, but most people, they put it on 8.5, and they also say that these water clusters in the water in the spring is so big that it's very hard to actually absorb the water molecules. So when you have this machine, it makes it more like the body can absorb more water. I think this started that I saw that people up in I don't know if it was in the Himalayan mountains, that they, of course, there can be many reasons why they didn't have the sicknesses as we have, but they saw that the structure on the water actually had another structure than we get in the spring, or in the faucet, you maybe say call it. So the hospitals, actually, I think it was in Japan, they started to use it, and just drinking that water helped people recover so fast. So
okay. Now we can use radical measures when it comes to if you are sorting out any acidity. And I hope they do what we call getting the pH of the blood by the time they think of alkalinizing. Otherwise, they do it too much. If we have a measure that we could follow, we could be guided by, so that we do not do a lot of alkalinization. Somebody was asking about putting lemon in water. The good thing about natural substances is that they do not tip the balance so much. And therefore, the body has corrective mechanism because it has to restore the balance. The problem is when we artificially do it, maybe we are using any additive. For example, there are those who suggest use of sodium carbonate. These are refined products that are added to treatments, but we have no measure. They are not natural. We don't know whether we are doing much, and therefore, at that point, then we should have measure the pH of the blood at that time, so that we know what we are being radical about. And once we restore the pH, and then we should continue with the natural methods of feeding the body. So if I were to put, or somebody was to ask, well, what if we put a lemon in water? It is natural, and therefore it does not significantly tip the balance of the pH. That is my view.
Can I make a comment? I didn't raise my hand, but
sure.
So we go to Rhode Island every week, and the water is highly chlorinated, fluorinated, all that stuff they do to it. I can even smell it when I want to brush my teeth. I can't use it. And we bring our own water, but I just, wonder how does that fluorinated and chlorinated water affect people? Because my sister told me that I could just put it in a big kettle and let it sit, and it will dissipate, that the chlorine in it will dissipate. Do you think that's my question? Is it true that the chlorine can dissipate over a few hours?
Okay, thank you. In Kenya, where I am, water is chlorinated. And I think in US and other countries, you have gone up to putting fluorine in water. Now, the danger with this is that fluorine and chlorine are highly reactive. And despite being methods of purification of water, I think they do more harm than good because of their placement in the reactivity series. These are substances that only require a single electron in the outermost shell in order to react. And the problem with them is that they are in the same group where we have iodine. And iodine is very essential in thyroid metabolism, because without iodine, then you develop thyroid disorders. Now, fluorine and chlorine are higher up in the reactivity ladder above iodine. And they tend, once they get into the body, they displace iodine, and they are more likely to they have higher affinity to the thyroid gland than iodine is. And from that point, we have a cascade of all other disorders because the thyroid gland is a major gland in the body. To dampen down the effects of chlorine, we also know that these are gases and they are highly volatile. I would advocate that anytime you're using chlorinated or fluoridated water, it's good to boil that water when it is open. That is the container you're using to boil that water. Ensure that from the very first time you heat that water, you open that lid because they're highly volatile and they escape into the atmosphere. That would be maybe the safer solution to these fluoridated and chlorinated waters. Otherwise, we may not escape some bit of chlorine or fluorine that remains, but we will have reduced much of the damage if we boil that water when it is open. Thank you.
Thank you so much. That was helpful. My sister had her thyroid removed as a child, and
Okay.
This is her house, and it's very, important. We bring water that we have had filtered here that doesn't have that in it, and we also go and get water from a special place that has a spring water. We encourage her to drink that and not to drink the water in her house. But
yes.
Yeah, thank you.
And also, when we go in the shower and get all this chlorine, I know in Norway, they can get filters to put into this so that you actually are filtering the water before the water is showering on you. So you don't absorb all that chlorine.
Yes. In fact, chemicals that are added to water to purify it are actually impurities themselves. And this is the problem. We have had issues of allergies, including asthma, hives, even inflammatory bowel diseases because of chlorine or use of chlorinated water. It is not, in Africa, it's not as bad as where you are because we are not using fluoride. They only use chlorine. And the parts of chlorine put in 1 million liters of water has been increased. And we find the water when we are running the taps foaming because of a lot of chlorine. They used to put 2 parts in 1 million liters, but these days they put 20 parts. That's a lot of chlorine. And we may not escape real conditions that come up like kidney stones, gallstones, diabetes, even hardening of blood vessels, which is arteriosclerosis. So these are the conditions we are fighting with. And the problem is is that we may do our best to guard our health, but then when the environment is destroyed, it's like we are going to lose a great deal of our health. Because I consider the environment to be 90% contributory to our health. It took God 6 days to create the environment, and only some hours to create a human being. And therefore, the larger component of what determines our health is the environment. Now, the devil is clever. He knows that. And that is why he has polluted the air. He has polluted the water. And even if we guard our health, we may not get the quality that we want. So it's a sad story to know that the choicest blessing that God has given us, that is air and water, has been polluted, and we can't avoid this pollution. It really saddens me. Okay, thank you. You may continue. Allow me to talk about the hydrological cycle. That is the cycle of water. And to remind you that no one is older than water, including the first man on this earth. Interestingly, the water that we drink has never been recreated. God has never created any other water. It is the same water that he created when he made the earth. Mm-hmm. And you wonder how this water is purified. There's a system we call the hydrological cycle. And we can pick some very important lessons from the hydrological cycle. And it starts this way. All the water has to go back to the clouds by a process we call evaporation. The sun is the major purifier of water. It heats up the water which is on the surface, water in the seas. And when the water is heated, it rises up without minerals. It is in distilled form. Okay? Distilled form is very important when it comes to detoxification. Once that water has evaporated, goes to the clouds or goes to the atmosphere, and when it reaches areas of temperature which is lower than the one on the surface of the earth, it condenses to form clouds. And then later we have it precipitates as rain, comes back to the ground, part of it runs on the surface, another part becomes underground water. Now, the lessons we are picking from the hydrological cycle is that the process of heating the water kills germs, and it also distills that water. The best water to detoxify with is distilled water because it has very few minerals, and it tends to get rid of anything that once you drink it, it absorbs those minerals that add to the toxic burden of the body, dissolves them and gets rid of them through sweat, urine, and also as we pass through and as we breathe. So distilled water is created naturally by God through the process of heating by the sun. And the sun is an antibiotic. So if we are able to tap rainwater as it comes before it gets contaminated on the ground, and this one is seasonal. I don't know whether you can benefit from this where you are, but we receive rain seasonally. So we have a time when we do not have rain, and these times we are forced to take underground water or water on the surface. It has a lot of minerals. It contributes to the toxic burden of the body. But seasonally, God will bring in distilled water. If we can tap this water and drink it, we could help to get rid of the burden of the inorganic elements that are within the body. That's how I came to love the hydrological cycle. The other good thing about the hydrological cycle is that water that percolates into the surface may dissolve essential minerals. We know that the largest part of our immune system is supported by minerals. These are elements that act as cofactors to help the body to fight diseases, and also that include infections. So water that percolates into the ground dissolve essential minerals that we can drink, that we can tap by drinking the water, underground water. And God has made it so seasonal that at times we are taking underground water, and at other times we are taking distilled water, which is that one falling down as rain. So that is about the hydrological cycle. I don't know whether anybody ever thought of that and how we can benefit from the global cleansing system of water that God installed himself. Eva?
Well, I got a message here from a sister who is with us here, and she was writing, rainwater is structured water, I have heard. Is there something to comment on that, or that the rainwater is actually structured water? I don't understand really what it means, but another thing I was, so you actually say that distilled water is good for us to drink?
Yes.
Okay. So it's better to have this distilled water than to have these other water machines.
And you can make your own distillery if it's possible to acquire it.
So,
yeah, you can distill water.
Okay, so how are you making it yourself? I saw once a missionary, he was using charcoal and some sand and stones, and so the water was quite dirty, but when it went through the stones and sand and charcoal, it came clear out.
Yes. Some people make their own distilleries, and it's a bit expensive. Here in Kenya, to buy distilled water is expensive. And what has been so efficient for us is to tap rainwater and have containers that keep that water, so that we just have to warm it when we need to drink it.
Right. I got another question here. If I can ask you, if this chemitrail, and the chemitrail are dropping chemicals down, how much does that influence the water? Is it then safe to drink the rainwater?
And that is where the problem of air pollution comes in, because rainwater in industrialized areas where we have a lot of air pollution will be affected. It will even react even faster than any other water when it comes to contact with those pollutants. And this means that our safest place to tap rainwater from is areas away from the cities, where that water does not come into contact with the pollutants in the atmosphere.
Thank you. Yeah, Marilyn.
Oh, okay. First of all, I just was thinking about how to distill my own water, and that's very interesting to me. And second, as a teacher with little kids, we had a song about the water cycle. I'll tell you right now, it's very short. It goes, evaporation, condensation, precipitation on the ground, and it's called the water cycle, and it's going round and round. That's how we taught the kids.
Right. Amen. Amen. Yeah, I heard that before, that the water we drink is actually the water from the creation.
Yes.
Oh, and one more thing I was thinking, I have a friend who once said to me, if humans hadn't gotten in the way, the earth would have healed itself by now.
Yes. Good. Yeah, the major problem we have had is interference by man with that hydrological cycle. In the same manner, he has interfered with the ecosystem. We have the way animal organisms depend on, there's interdependence between organisms and their environment, but human beings have interfered with that, and we are not benefiting, but we are getting more diseases from that interference. So just to continue, water has physiological benefits in the body, and it's good that we have mentioned that we also have bad water, or using the wrong kind of water. These are like two gospels. We have good water and bad water. And because the devil knows that good water is associated with the healing properties of Jesus himself, he has polluted the waters. I want to remind you that most of our body is constituted of water. The same way the Earth's surface, the larger area of the Earth's surface is water. And we could think about the reasons why God chose it to be that way. That the larger part of the Earth is water, and also the larger part of our body is water. Because at birth, a child is 80%, a baby, a neonate, newly born, is 80% water. And as they grow older, we tend to lose the amount of water. And by the time we are adults, we are about 60% water or 55%, depending on whether you are a man or woman. And women tend to keep a lot of body fat, and therefore the volume of water is reduced. But we have also organs that cannot, have a large part of them as water, such as the brain, the lungs, and maybe bones have the least amount of water. So this will tell us that we need water on a daily basis. And we don't drink water when we are thirsty, but we have maintenance fluids that have to be kept at balance all the time. Do not wait for the thirst signals, because, thank you so much. I have noticed someone is taking water, which is crucial. So do not wait for the thirst signals. By the time you receive the thirst signals, an imbalance has been caused, and that is why the body is alerting you. It's good to remember that the body has to be maintained by taking adequate amounts of water. And these might depend on certain factors, such as the body mass. The larger the body mass, the more the amount of water that you need. It might also depend on whether you're a man or a woman, your level of activity. People who work up, who are doing workouts, you are engaged in a lot of activity, you tend to lose more water, and therefore your water requirements will be more than the others who are sedentary, who are not engaging in a lot of activity. So on average, we normally say you take about 8 glasses of water daily. This translates to 2 liters of water. It might not be adequate for somebody who is working out, whose level of activity is high. But this fluid that we call water, 8 glasses of water, they are recommended for people who are not sick. When it comes to conditions such as heart failure, renal diseases, some lung problems, your amount of water that you need to take might be limited. And I want you to think about this, that water is a blessing to somebody who is healthy. You need to drink this water. And when God has given you freedom to obey the principles of health, you will continue to enjoy the blessings of water. But see how contrary it becomes once, because of disobeying the principles of health, and we lose our health. For example, organs such as the heart and the kidney. Now, the water becomes a nuisance to you. It becomes a curse. So that what is a blessing to another becomes a curse to you. So we only enjoy God's blessings when we are in a state of health. Otherwise, if we break the rules of health, that same water that is good for someone who is not sick becomes a curse to someone who is sick. We lose a lot of water on a daily basis. An average person will pass 1.5 liters of urine in a working day, 1.5 liters of urine. By breathing, we also lose about 300 milliliters of water. The way you are talking, your breath contains moisture, and in a day, you could be losing about 300 milliliters to 400 milliliters of water. When we pass 2, we lose about 500 milliliters of water. And by perspiration, you are losing about another 500 milliliters of water. So in total, we could be losing between 2.5 to 3 liters in a day. This water has to be returned because you have to maintain the cells in a state of osmotic balance. So this would mean that an average person should not drink less than 10 glasses of water in a day. And we should ensure continuity so that in any part of the day, you are sipping some water. And I think the best word I can use is to sip, because gulping water will disturb the balance. It is important to know that any substance in the body is in a state of balance, including water. And therefore, we should not drink water in a way that we are disturbing that balance. That is why we should sip bit by bit until we have provided the body with the required amount of water. It is not advisable to drink water when you are eating, because this would mean you are diluting the enzymes that are responsible for digestion. It's always important to take your water at least 1 hour before you take a meal, and ensure the meal that you're going to prepare is also not watery, because enzymes only function at optimum conditions, optimum pH, optimum temperature. And increasing the amount of water when you're taking a meal would mean that you're diluting your enzymes. They have to work, they can only work better in a certain concentration. The other thing I said about the specific heat capacity of water, we should avoid drinking too hot water or too cold water, because we lose a lot of energy in order to regulate the temperature we have taken the water in to that of the body. And I find that one very important, because energy translates to your immunity and ability to fight conditions or diseases. We may talk about certain functions of water. There are many, we may not exhaust them, but I find the following very important. Transport. Water is a transport medium. And once you drink water, you are able not only to transport useful nutrients to where they are required. And the medium that transports those nutrients in the blood is called plasma. Plasma is water in the blood. So if we drink water, we ensure that there is fluidity. We decrease the viscosity of blood and ensure that nutrients, including oxygen, are supplied to distant tissues in the body. Water will also transport toxins out of the body. Once you drink water, by the time that water is processed to be passed out as urine, it carries with itself toxins. So we cleanse our body by taking water, and by taking that water, we are able to excrete those toxins. Remember, the major detoxification system is the renal system, and it requires a lot of water. Each day, your kidney is purifying about 18-20 jerrycans of blood in a 24-hour period. And this requires a lot of water. So as it purifies the blood, it also gets rid of toxins, and you pass them out through urine. So the best medium we can get rid of toxins in the body is the urinary system. But we also know the body has other 3 avenues through which we get rid of toxins. We have only 4 major ways in which the body can detoxify or get rid of waste. The renal system, you pass out urine, pee your way off to health. Sweat is another mechanism. The breath that we breathe out is another mechanism, and also passage of stool. The 4 mechanisms or avenues of excretion require water. Another importance of water is maintaining the osmotic balance. It's a buffer. It ensures that your blood pH is never too high or too low. So it will ensure the osmotic balance. And we have other components in this osmotic balance that includes elements. But the major commodity, the major substance is water. We have water inside the cell and water outside the cell. And there is a balance in that water, depending that helps your cells to be functional. All our cells are bathed in water. It's like the turbine in an electricity generating plant, whereby unless we have the cells bathed in water, they die. They are going to collapse. And this will lead to so many diseases that come as a result of dehydration. Water is also used to regulate temperature. It's the best medium for regulation of temperature. We know that the heat that we get from the body, it's as a result of metabolism. Anything we eat will be translated into energy. Water takes that heat and distributes it across the body in the plasma of blood. So your extremities, the central body parts, all of them, if your body is functioning well and your blood vessels are open, we have no clogging, then we should get equal distribution of temperature across all body parts. And in case we are exposed to cold, we need to keep our extreme bodies warm, the extremities warm, by covering our body parts so that we do not lose heat. That is very essential for our health. We know that water is also essential for immunity. And at this point, I would like to remind you something, that the ability of the body to fight, or the organism to fight an infection, will also depend on the amount of water that organism has. We know science tells us, and we agree to some extent, that we have animal kingdoms. And the animal kingdoms, we'll start with the more complex animals that have that contain in them a lot of water, to the least complex, the bacteria, and the bacteria and the viruses. So the ability of an organism even to survive in a certain habitat and to resist diseases will also be determined by the amount of water it has. And here comes the crucial question that we have a lot of fear associated with viruses today. In the kingdom, or in the biological classification of organisms, they appear least on that list. They are the most, they are the weakest in that classification. And by the way, they are not considered to be living. They are non-living particles that depend on another organism that has a cell for them to survive. The amount of water in those small organisms, in those microscopic or microorganisms, cannot allow them to resist certain or to survive in certain habitats. So we say they are habitat specific, they are cell specific, and once they change their habitat, they die. And that is why you find malaria in Africa, in the south of the tropics, but it's difficult to get malaria in the temperate zones simply because Plasmodium cannot survive in cold climates. The same applies to all microorganisms. They are specific to their habitats, and once they change their habitats, they die, and they cannot change because they want to survive. So I found a lot of difficulty in understanding how a virus moved from the temperate zones and came to Africa in the tropics, and it can survive the harsh climate or the heat conditions of the tropical areas. So that was disturbing, and it doesn't add up to natural microorganisms. So this ability to survive in different habitats is because of the ability also to contain in your body or in your organism a lot of water, because water regulates the temperature, it provides buffers, it helps you to excrete waste. But the less water you have in your body, especially for the case of microorganisms, makes them to die so fast once they change their habitats. And that is why the viral theory does not add up when it comes to nature, when it comes to natural microorganisms. Now, what is also essential for metabolic reactions? No reaction in the body, whether it's oxidation, the one that gives us energy from the food that we eat, will happen unless we have water in our systems. Water is also used for lubrication, and this reminds me of the moving parts in our body, the muscles, the tendons, the ligaments, and the joints. They require water for lubrication. And that is why for people who have back pains, consistent back pains, and the discs have dried up, they are going to experience a lot of back pain. So water enables our body, the moving parts, to lubricate. And that is why when you talk for a long time, the smallest muscles in the body, the vocal cords, they get irritated, okay? Because as you talk, you decrease the amount of water in the body, and therefore they get irritated. So it is essential for the moving parts, the joints. And we have cases whereby or the discs, the cartilages that come between two bones, two moving parts of the body, most of them, they do not have blood vessels. So the only way they get to absorb blood is by diffusion. So when they are pressed down, by the time they bounce back again, they absorb water like a sponge. Okay, they absorb blood like a sponge. So that is how discs and cartilages absorb water, because they do not contain blood vessels in the central area. So this means that they are the major culprit in a body that is dehydrated, because the places where we have the cartilages, because we don't have blood vessels, once an organism is dehydrated, they also tend to lose or not to get adequate supplies of water or of blood as they are required as other tissues. And so that is why joint pains are common and are worse if people are dehydrated. So water also helps in digestion, in absorption, and I talked about gaseous exchange. It provides, it enhances gases exchange in the lungs. Water is also a shock absorber. And I want you to think of the area around the waist. If you are to press around your waist, you could find that the only amount of bone that is there is not more than 4 centimeters on the back, okay? The vertebral column in the lumbar area, the lower back, it's a very small section of bone. The rest of the body, the rest of the abdominal, the rest of the waist circumference is muscles, and it's basically non-bony tissue. So this means that if your back, where we have those bones, where we have the discs, they don't have a lot of water, they tend to collapse very fast. So that water is...
If you have kidney problems, do you need to drink less water through the mouth? But can you compensate, what you always that word said, by taking enema, getting water in through the enema? Does she need to be careful about how much water she's drinking through the mouth when she has kidney problems? Is it better to use the water in through the enema?
Yes, I should add that the most important thing when you're dealing with a kidney problem is to measure the fluid intake and output, input and output. Whatever method you're going to use to put fluid into your body, then it should translate to your body should be able to get rid of that fluid after it has gone the process of urine making. So you can take oral fluids, but be guided by the fact that the amount that you take should also translate to your kidney making urine. When you put water through an enema, the mucus, the membranes of the large intestine will also absorb water. But the truth of the matter is, after it has been absorbed, your kidney is able to make enough urine, or do we have some water being retained that might overtax your system? So whichever you use, I highly recommend taking water orally as opposed to enemas. And you can only use enemas because in certain in chronic kidney conditions, patients develop nausea and they will not be able to retain that water. So enemas can be applied in that case. But if you're able to take water orally, that is the best way. And after you take that water, ensure that your kidneys are able to make urine. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I have also a question. You know, I have made so much tinctures, and now I heard that they just can last for a couple of years if you have used vegetable glycerin. So I'm trying to use much of it. So how is that when you say that I should just drink pure water and not put anything into it?
Okay. It is highly recommended that you take pure water to prevent altering the pH. But the other thing I said is that anything you add to water that is natural slightly tips the balance, and the body is able to restore any tips in that balance faster. The problem comes when whatever additive you put in that water has some interference, artificial interference, so that it is tipping the balance too high or too low. And therefore, the body uses a lot of energy to restore itself to the required balance. So I would have no problem with tincturing with your water, but then I would have a problem if whatever you're adding is significantly interfered with as man tries to put his additives, and that one you tip the balance too high or too low to an extent that the body uses a lot of energy to bring the pH to balance.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Yeah, wow. I think we have learned much today. I have learned much, at least. So when a person...
I took 2 pages of notes. You're a very well-informed speaker, and it was wonderful.
Okay, thank you.
So when a person is sick, I heard much about, you know, it would be good to water fast for 72 hours, just so that the cells can recover or restore. Is that something you have experienced on your patients?
Okay. I do not have a personal experience with that, but water fast is very essential. One, because that is the time when the body gets rid of the toxic burden in the body. We know for sure that water is a medium of excretion. And when you go for a water fast, you not only rest, the rest of the system, the digestive system needs a lot of rest, but you also make your organs to work at a lower rate than they normally work when you are eating or when you are digesting food. And so that is the time the body now shifts to breaking up excess, anything that is in excess. We know excess energy can be stored in the body as fats. That is the time to break down the fats. Your weight is likely to reduce during that time. And as you are in that fast, then the water becomes a medium, the only medium through which the metabolites or the broken down materials can be gotten rid of. I have I have listened to members, to friends' testimonies on water fast. I have not done it myself, and it yielded very good results. These are people I know, and I just know about water fast through their experience.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. You know, I got another question here from my sister, and she says, I have chronic low salt. Too little salt, it sounds like in her, the blood test is saying that. So will the water then come into the cells when there is too little salt?
Okay. Unfortunately not, because water follows salt. Wherever we have high concentration of salt, that is where water goes, from an area of low concentration to an area of high concentration. And I guess the salt she was talking about was sodium, because it's a major contributor in the shifting of water in the body. We advise that there is a recommended amount of sodium and potassium that is supposed to be in the body. And that is when once you have had the recommended amount of salt, then we have the osmotic balance. So for somebody who has low salt, then they should look for salt and lick it to be able to get enough salt. Because wherever salt is, now water follows the salt. So they have to check on their salt, because there will be no osmotic balance if they have low salt than the required one.
So do you think that could be a problem for her because she's eating mostly raw food? And in that way, add too little salt to what other people add to the food they are eating, when you eat cooked food?
I think the question we need to ask ourselves is, which are the sources of salt? No one more provides salt by nature. Salt does not come from plants. Plants can store salt. And when I mean salt, I mean all the elements that constitute what we call salt: potassium, sodium, calcium. So no living organism in nature can provide you or has ability to make salt. Salt comes from the ground. And there are only three ways you can tap that salt that is in the ground. Maybe by drinking the water that runs on the ground, because it dissolves some of the salt. That is one way. Or you can eat that soil itself. We know rock salt can be dug from the ground, and that is soil. And by taking that salt, you get to provide your body with minerals that include sodium. And the other way that you can get that salt, it's by consuming parts of the plant that tap mineral salts. These are the roots. So you can consume root tubers. And why they're underground, or why, you see, God has made it possible for some plants to make their food underground, is for the sake of enabling us to get those salts. So we can eat root tubers, because minerals tap a lot of salt from the soil. We can take water that runs on the ground, or we can eat the rocks themselves that come from the ground. These may include even sea salt, which has a high concentration of minerals, as opposed to refined salt. Because refined salt, especially in Kenya, has only two minerals: sodium and chloride. They say they add iodine, but I doubt, and therefore it is refined. So the type of food, yes, and I would recommend root tubers, because they have more concentration of minerals than any other part of the plant.
Mm. Thank you. So, she's saying that she had very low salt long time before she was starting to eat just raw food, mostly raw food. But she's eating much celery. So you are, this long. But the roots are having the most salt.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. She's writing that she's using ocean salt. Is ocean salt healthy today when we think about all the pollution in the water?
Well, Let's make use of the sun. Let's burn our salt, if it's coming from the water, by exposing it to the sun in an open container, and it will kill off all the bacteria. We can also boil it. By boiling, we don't lose the quality of the minerals. We don't, because minerals cannot be destroyed by boiling. So let's utilize the sun. If we fear the water could be polluted, we can also boil the salt and then allow the water to evaporate and be left with our salt.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah, well, we have been keeping on there for 2 hours. Now we have to drink some water, Dr. Fred.
Yes.
So I want to thank you so much.
Okay. Lord Jesus, each one of us wants to be a healthy part of your body. We ask for you to give us the wisdom and the willingness to make necessary changes. I think that we all want to please you, especially people here today. We want to honor you. We want your Holy Spirit to dwell with us and live in us. We know that of ourselves, we cannot make ourselves holy or perfect. There is only perfection in you. But we ask today that you'd help us to rejoice in your presence, be hopeful, and be your hands and feet with more effectiveness. I pray that everyone in this session today will stay healthy and they will not get COVID, or if they do, they recover quickly, and help them to do everything they can to remain healthy and hopeful and just a channel of your water of life. Lord, we're grateful that you really are the water of life. We thank you in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you so much, Marilyn. And thank you so much to you, Fred, who gave us all this knowledge about all the benefits about this free. It doesn't cost anything. Water.
Amen.
So thank you so much.